Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. This is a big Octa one today. And the title is a bit scary, but do not be too afraid. I always say Bitty loves a crisis. And here we go. We have a few coming. But again, remember, it's not bad news for Bitcoin. It's bad news for other things, but not Bitcoin. So welcome in. And you would not believe this. Happy Tuesday. The market cap is at 2.32 trillion. And Bitcoin is exactly at 67,420. Which is a number that means something to some people. Not me, of course. Dominance about 57%, which is pretty high. And fear and greed is at 70, which is greed. And let's get into the whole story today. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the mods in chat, KA, TND, Tesla, Sean Donnelly, and everybody else. And this is just a guy on the internet, not financial advice ever, as you all know. And shout out to Patreon as well. June ACK 5848 says, just joined Patreon. Love the data. It cancels out the noise that's out there. Yes, that's the whole mission. Because everywhere you look, it's lies. It's disinformation. It's misinformation. It's people with agendas to try and convince you to do different things, no matter where you look. And the good thing about me is I've got no agenda but helping people. Let's get into the ugly news. This is going to be a pretty extended, ugly segment. So seatbelts, please. First of all, Bank Crisis 2.0, or 3.0 actually, if you include the GFC back in 2009. So Bank Crisis 2.0 being in this decade is about to hit. 66 banks are about to hit the wall. And we're seeing a lot of weird stuff happening right now. You've got, we actually had a community member the other day. They were alarmed to say, my bank just closed. Well, we've been talking about this for a long time. Most of the banks are actually not technically fungible right now. And another news too, banks are not liquid at all, and unrealized losses by US banks are 7 times higher than the 2008 global financial crisis. US banks are in very, very hot water. Thank you, Linda. And this is because they were stretched and destroyed by the Fed. And of course, the interest rate hikes. Now it's time to pay the piper. And as usual, they'll all fold and be rolled into JP Morgan probably. And that's what happened last time. So I expect that to happen again as well. Also, what's also very bizarre, and it shows you how the state of the financial system is so broken. This is from Charlie Bilello. Rates are cut and mortgage rates spike. So the Fed cut interest rates by 50 basis points on September 18th. And well, guess what happened after that? Mortgage rates went from 6.1% to 6.82%. That's the highest level since July. And this shows you there is a problem in the long bond, which means nobody wants to buy this stuff unless the rates are high. So think of a treasury bond like anything else. Unless you're paid a certain amount of return, people aren't going to touch it, because they know fiat is going to zero. Thank you, A Bottle of Red and Joe the Hun. Joe the Hun. I love that name. And this is exactly what's going down. Fiat is going to zero. This is why the longer term rates are rising, i.e. this. Logically, doesn't make sense, but this is why we're in such a weird situation right now. Long-term inflation expectations have been moving up, and there's been a flood of new supply in the bond market, but nobody wants to buy it. Because U.S. national debt is exploding ever higher, increasing year over year by nearly $1 trillion, nearly $600 billion in just the last 2 months, nearly $400 billion in the last 3 weeks, and we're heading to $36 trillion, and that's what happened since they took out the debt ceiling. They are printing literally like money is going out of fashion, sending money in all sorts of places, not where it belongs, but to other places. And maybe there's a theory out there as well to try and print as much as they can to make economic numbers look good, but they're not by any stretch, as you've been saying here. In addition, shout out to Paul Tudor Jones. He is a legend. He said, all roads lead to inflation. By the way, I've always said all roads lead to Bitcoin. Now he says all roads lead to inflation, which means indirectly to Bitcoin too. He is long Bitcoin and gold. The US government's debt and deficit issues aren't going anywhere, no matter who wins the presidency next month, said Jones. We are in deep, deep trouble. And by the way, if you want to find out if you are like Paul Tudor Jones, you can take the free investor profiler quiz. And by the way, you'll be alongside 11,000 people that took this free quiz to find out what your strengths are and your weaknesses. So anyway, it's most important thing in life is to understand exactly who you are, where you're strong and where you're weak, shore up those weaknesses. Vagabond and Dancing Shoes, thank you so much. Now, per Paul Tudor Jones, he said gold and Bitcoin is what he's in. By the way, Larry Fink has been talking about this a lot as well lately. Larry Fink, I think, is now the chief marketing officer for Bitcoin. But if you look at this, gold has had its best year in 20 years because gold also can sniff out a crisis. We have had the highest returns in 2 decades. Year to date, 31.4%. Again, if you divide gold by M2 over the last couple of decades or since 2020, it hasn't been a well-performing asset. But boy, did it change this year. And this is a sign, Thelonjet as well, this is a sign of how bad things are under the surface. Again, share this chart with anybody. Share it with a 3-year-old. They'll say, ooh, that looks pretty scary. And it is, believe me. And there's worse stuff happening too. I did warn you, the ugly section today is the biggest I think I've ever done. And here we go. Crime surge has devastated retail stores across the United States. Walgreens, 7-Eleven, Target, so many other places are just hitting the wall right now. And America is turning into a shopping graveyard wasteland because we're making crime great again. Crime is free. People can now steal as much as they want in places like California. As long as it doesn't exceed $950, it's fine to steal. And these are the rules that have resulted in the wasteland. This is just a cool little image from New York City, 6th Avenue, I think, and just all the stores that have closed down. And it doesn't just hit, by the way. And the same in Portland and San Francisco and others. You got Staples, Lowe's, Bed Bath & Beyond, T-Mobile, Bank of America, banks too, Vitamin Shop, CVS, the entire building on 625th, 6th Avenue, Clear MD, and Terry's Gourmet. Boom, boom, boom. Everywhere you go in many parts of the US, you will see, like in the major central square of a major city, half of the stores will be boarded up with plywood because they can't tolerate the crime anymore. But if you listen to mainstream media, crime has gone down because they had FBI tweak the numbers. Again, do not believe what you read, but believe your eyes when you go to these places and see. Anyway, hopefully that's the end of the ugly news. Yes, it is. Let's get into the bad news, which isn't that bad at all today. And again, the reason I cover that ugly news segment is to understand how you need that life raft. That's why I make videos, everybody. So I hope the message is loud and clear. Now, other kind of bad news. This caused a bit of a ruckus in the Bitcoin community. Michael Saylor, friend of the channel, love him dearly, by the way. I'm just reporting on the ruckus that's flying around the internet right now. The Bitcoin community was a little bit up in arms because Michael Saylor called self-custody holders paranoid crypto anarchists in an interview, suggesting their distrust increases seizure risk and comparing it to the 1933 gold confiscation. That was Section 6102. Etc. But MicroStrategy does not believe this. Now, the first attempted prosecution under 6102 was someone whose gold was not in self-custody, but rather held in other places, and it was taken. But anyway, the point is, we'll see what happens. I personally believe I'm kind of leaning on the side of Michael Saylor here to a large extent. Depending on who the government is, of course, but because players like BlackRock are in the game now, it will be very difficult for the government to confiscate Bitcoin. And even in other places, of course, they've tried it and they can't do it. So again, not telling you to self-custody or not, or own an ETF or whatever, but fingers crossed, smart minds will prevail in government. Now, second piece too, China is printing like there is no tomorrow. This is from Jeff Vinegar. And just look at the setup here. Look at the red line, which is the People Bank of China central bank balance sheet. One of these two central banks is growing fast, and the other one isn't. People's Bank of China has increased its balance sheet by nearly over $500 billion in just 16 weeks. and that is nearly a 10% jump. Again, we saw this happen as well, the impact on Chinese stocks. But the Fed balance sheet will grow too. It's growing in a different way, not their central bank balance sheet, but they're definitely printing a ton of money, incurring a lot of debt. Dudeface, thank you as well for coming. And DBF430. The point is, all the central banks are printing, okay, like never before. And we're not even in a crisis. Can you imagine what would happen if a war hit or another pandemic or something like this? It'd be crazy. Global recession even, who knows? Anyway, enough of all that bad and ugly news. Time to get into the good news. Lots of good news too. First of all, fear and greed is back. We are hovering now at 70. We went up as high as 73 a few days ago. And that's a good thing for the market. What did the market do in Bitcoin terms over the last 7 days? Well, it was mixed. Most assets fell against Bitcoin, notably Ethereum continuing to underperform, Binance, Avalanche, ICP, etc., Doge. Despite there being a second coming of the memes, which, just so people understand, I don't touch memes. It's not my style. But Solana did beat Bitcoin by 6%. Monero, Chainlink, Uniswap, Aptos as well, and Tron. They all kind of did quite well. Let's see exactly what the performance looks like from the Crypto Compendium. You can see the winner for the week is Doge, which is unusual when you see this. I have a funny feeling the source I get this from, it has erroneous data, whereas this data I know is perfect. Anyhow, Solana is the second biggest winner for the week. Litecoin is third, and we'll see why Litecoin as well, because of money flows in a few minutes. And then down the losing end, you got Tau, WIF, and Sui having a bad week. But remember, what goes up must come down. Everything mean reverts. Sui was on a rampage. Let's get to the money flows, though, as well, before we get into the detail of altcoins. Digital assets hit $2.2 billion inflow. This is the biggest inflow since July 2024. And again, many people believe the reason for this is some people are anticipating a winner in the election. So we'll see. Dudeface, thank you so much as well for coming. Let's look at the breakdown as well. Bitcoin won the lion's share, $2.13 billion in, sorry about the green thing being over the number, but that is a $2.134 billion. Ethereum even had a positive week, up 57 million. Solana, 2.4 million. And Litecoin, 1.7 million. Remember here, the number 2 or number 3 performer, Litecoin. Again, follow the money. That shows you exactly what will pump. And it's not a lot of money, but it shows you exactly what can happen. Cardano continues to underperform as well, down 1.5 million. And that's it. The other big number there is short Bitcoin, 12.3 million. A lot of people enter a short on Bitcoin. They might be entering a long, but they enter a short as well to lock in their gains. Not necessarily expecting it to come down, but just in case it does, they will lock in some of their gains too. Now, let's get into the crazy, crazy news too. And part of this could be related to, the action in gold and stuff that Paul Tudor Jones is saying. But BlackRock, this is kind of stunning. BlackRock deployed $1.7 billion this month, and they acquired 28,500 Bitcoin. Quiz for the kids at home watching the show. Divide 28,500 by 450. And over the number of trading days, that is 14 days. That's a big, big amount of, accumulation of daily issuance from Bitcoin. Huge. BlackRock are back. 40,000 Bitcoin were gobbled up in the last 7 trading days. Not just BlackRock, but all the others as well. We are in the third big phase of accumulation right now. And you can see BlackRock is dominating. That's the red line here on the chart. Good thing is GBTC has kind of bled out, so that's the green. They still have negative days, but nothing as bad as what they had in the past. Actually, just check on Grayscale. They lost 4.9 million yesterday. But here you can see that's nothing compared to the amount that literally BlackRock is sucking in every day. Over $250 million, sometimes $500 million a day, and a massive amount of Bitcoin every couple of days. So what does this all mean? Where does this all go? Well, first of all, Bitcoin ETF is now the most successful ETF in history. It took 6 years for gold to nearly get to $20 billion. And the Bitcoin ETFs smoked it in less than 186 days. 186 trading days, not even a full year. So this is big. Now, what's also very interesting for me, we've seen the crazy strength of gold. And yes, Bitcoin is still beating gold up about 50% year to date versus gold 30-something%. But at the same time, gold is breaking new all-time highs. Bitcoin is not. That tells me Bitcoin is going to pump. The question is, how high will it go in October? We'll get into that right now as well. Brayman, thank you for coming. This is another view of the ETF flows and fire. Again, record-breaking inflows. 9 US spot ETFs collectively saw huge flows. And it's changed the sentiment over the last 4 months since July. And these significant inflows suggest confidence in institutional investors from financial advisors rather than retail speculation. Remember, we talked about the salespeople at Morgan Stanley, etc. Well, they're beginning to start pounding the street. So is BlackRock, and they're convincing their customers they need to allocate towards Bitcoin. And like Paul Tudor Jones, Bitcoin and gold are his games. Now, despite gold hitting record highs 30 times in 2024, and despite Bitcoin ETFs having sucked in over $20 billion, we still do have no all-time highs for Bitcoin. So therefore, we should be going up. Angle Blackson, Adam Q, thank you so much. Let's talk about hardness as well. It's been a while since we touched on hardness. This is the HODL Wave chart of the day from Bitcoin Pro magazine. And cast your eyes in the top right corner, that purple. Basically, these are the cohorts aggregated that hold Bitcoin 6 months or longer. We have 6 to 12 months at the very bottom in orange, then 12 to 24 months, etc., etc. And the purple is those who have held for more than 10 years. By the way, that purple is lost. It may never see the light of day. As I say, 4 to 5 million Bitcoin are lost. There will never be more. There'll never be 21 million. There'll probably never be more than 14 or 15 million Bitcoin. So just remember that. But again, 80% of Bitcoin is now held by this long-term holder cohort. And we are still halfway through the bull run. So what happens when big money wants to buy? The point is they can't unless these long-term holders decide to sell. But now with all the chaos in the world, they're less inclined to do so. You know, you don't sell your life raft before a big storm. I just made that up. I hope it makes sense. Now, VanEck did come out. I shared this on DCA yesterday. $90 billion fund. VanEck says Bitcoin will hit $350,000 on Fox Business News. They didn't exactly say when, but they are extremely bullish. Now, in other news too, again, I don't think we're going to hit $350,000, but I'll be happy to eat my shoes live if that does happen, because we'll all be very happy. But again, will it hit 350K? Probably in the next cycle, which means approximately 3.5 years from now. Very possible, probably a lot higher too. Now, Ecoinometrics, shout out to Nick as well. If he believes this Bitcoin breakout is genuine, we're entering the true bull market phase. I spoke about that a bit yesterday too. And the target price looks very attractive. And per Ecoinometrics simulations, assuming sustained momentum over the next 12 months, we have a very good chance that Bitcoin will double. That puts the price at least 130K sometime in 2025. Probably the latter half of 2025 for that to hit. So again, if you're buying Bitcoin now at 65, 67K, it could double, which is outstanding, especially considering we were at 15.5 during the bear bonkers returns, and it far exceeds gold as well. Let's check out another statistic. Where and how high are we going to go in October? And of course, it's extremely difficult to predict short-term movements. We have, 8 days left in October? But a lot of people are talking about 70K. In fact, over half of poly markets believe 70,000 will happen in October. And people are putting nearly $1.2 million in this bet. So, and if you look at the other odds at the same time, not much action there at all. So a lot of people are placing some big money on the fact that we will hit 670K in October. Remember, we hit 69.4, so we were within $600 of 70K. So again, we definitely will probably touch it in the next week or 8 days. Now, getting back to the place we are in the cycle, this is the lovely time chart. Again, touched on it briefly yesterday, but I want to spend a little more time on it today. This is the Bitcoin spiral clock, and you can see here where we are right now. We just entered 1:30 on the clock, and that is the green line. If you imagine a traditional clock, that's where we are. And all the action happens historically in the next 3 hours, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, 3 hours is 12 months on this clock. This clock is a 4-year clock. So from this green line to the purple line, things are going to kick off, as Raoul Powell would call it, the banana zone. So buckle in. If history repeats, it's going to be a fun time. And the action we're seeing on the ETFs and the things we're hearing from Paul Tudor Jones all support that too. Let's get into Bitcoin season versus altcoins. And here you can see it is still Bitcoin season. Bitcoin's doing really well. The breakdown over the last 90 days, Bitcoin is on that left-hand side of the black number, up 2.2%. Again, we haven't gone anywhere. We had a very doldrumy summer, and that's just a fact of life. But some things did perform very well, like Sui, but that's also beginning to mean revert right now as well. Down the bottom right-hand side, you got Paul, and it shows you, as I said before many times, it makes no sense to rebrand. Rebranding a brand that is known only causes confusion, and to people like me, it's a sign of desperation, so watch that space. Narratives. The narrative over the last month that won is meme coins, up nearly 29%. Crazy Bitcoin up of 5.6% over the last month, and Ethereum up 1.3%. And basically a ton of other narratives have outperformed. DEXs, AI, NFT applications, data services, real-world assets, DeFi, social, all on fire, all beating Bitcoin. So again, watch the narratives carefully. It's a new segment here, but it's important to know where the money goes. But remember, after a narrative pumps, it will also mean revert. That's just how the market works. Now, VanEck, speaking of, once again, they are coming out with their SOLANA staking ETP in Europe. Yes, you get more staking yourself, but some people are very confident having an ETF or an ETP rather than holding their own coins and putting them on a hot wallet, etc., and staking them themselves. It's just too much hassle. I think VanEck take 25%, but if you're still getting 6 or 5 or 6% return, the point of this, though, is, as I've always said, something like an ETH ETF without staking returns makes 0 sense. The only people that will actually buy that are the TradFi normies that do not know about the staking reward that you get from crypto. Anywho, let's look at stocks real quick. Stock market last week, a lot of green. NVIDIA, bright green. TSM, bright green. Microsoft up nearly 2.5%. Apple kind of flat. Google kind of flat. Amazon 1.5%. Tesla down 1.1%. Still suffering after the 10/10 event, which, again, when you were there, it blew your mind. You were able to see the future. Now the future will not be a surprise because you know what's going to happen. Anyhow, speaking of NVIDIA, the Rampage is still ongoing. I'm glad I bought my calls back. And it's now at about $142. Market cap is over $3.5 trillion, which is crazy to think makes up, 12, 13% of US GDP. One company. And no, AI is not dead. There is still an insatiable appetite for what they make, and they'll continue to do well. But the real revolution is coming, as I mentioned before. We just don't know when, and that is the real application of AI. And that will be from Tesla. Tesla earnings are tomorrow. I'll be doing a live stream on the earnings call with a bunch of really cool people like Emmett Peppers and Hans C. Nelson and a bunch of other cool people. So it'll be my first time ever doing that, but why not? We'll talk about everything that we expect from the earnings call. We will look at the earnings deck. We'll break it all down and identify what it all means and try prize out the good stuff and see if it's worth nibbling a little bit in after hours too. So I forgot to break this down too. Many people are expecting a revenue beat because of all the good stuff that they're doing, but a lot of it hinges on how much they can, recognize from things like the mega packs. Earnings per share will be down over last year, probably, But the most important thing is automotive gross margin. It could be 19%. If that does happen, and then we do hit 19%, Wall Street will be very happy. What that basically means is if they sell $100 worth of stuff, they make $19, which is record-smashing margins in that particular industry. And shout out to Gergevin as well, who bought a Cybertruck a year ago. He was a little bit anti-Tesla. Now he's coming around. Anyway, speaking of China stocks again, monster Chinese stocks buybacks. This is courtesy of the Financial Times. You can see renminbi in billions of dollars, nearly $250 billion, $250 billion in stock buybacks so far this year. And all of this action only happened in the past month or two. So yes, Chinese stocks are still there, still doing well, and they were definitely worth a flutter. Now, in other news too, shout out to Javier Milei, La Fuera, as he calls it. He is cutting another agency. He's going to dissolve their tax collection agency and the AFIP and replace it with a simpler, more efficient, less costly, and less bureaucratic structure. And by the way, the US has been talking about doing this for a long time. Instead of having 30,000 pages of tax law, simplify it. Done. Although that wouldn't be good news for all the tax accountants out there. Anyhow, simpler is always better. Who knows what could happen in the next couple of years? We'll see. But hope some people take a page out of Javier's book. And shout out to everybody and the team behind me that turn all these videos into podcasts and Substack newsletters. 10 cents a day if you're interested and you want the hard copy. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to mods in the chat. Hope you liked the show. Hope it wasn't too dark in the beginning. But hey, we need to know about the darkness so we can prepare our life rafts. That's how it works. Dude Face, appreciate you. And thanks all for coming. I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.